Good morning, and welcome to today's webcast, Increase Business Process Efficiency with Automation. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome, and thank you for viewing our webcast series. Before we begin, please keep the following in mind. You can customize how you view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top right of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons that relate to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF of today's slides from the Slide Deck and Handouts widget. You can ask questions by typing in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. This presentation is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters from Moss Adams, Loren Managing Director, and Noory Song, Senior Manager. Loren is a firm leader of business intelligence and corporate performance management. He helps businesses improve their processes, become more efficient, and make better decisions. Noory has been working with financial institutions since 2005. His experience is focused in finance, accounting, operations, compliance, and risk management, with specialties in review of Bank Securities Act, regulatory compliance, residential mortgage and commercial lending, and asset quality reviews. With that, I'll turn it over to Loren to get us started.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you everybody for joining. This webcast is a follow-on to a video series that we have sent out, and it will just further expand upon that. If for some reason you haven't seen or didn't receive that, just feel free to reach out and we'll get that sent your way. So today what we want to cover is just a better insight into automation, the value of doing that, what it actually is, and then we'll go into some examples and show how these modern tools have really got this to a place where it's a user-driven solution, and then we'll help you see ways that you can look ahead and begin to use that in your business. To get started here, we first just want to address, why automation? What does that really add for you? And it comes down to just helping your decision-making process and making sure you have the information that you need to make informed decisions. A lot of what we find with information is there's somewhat of what we call a shelf life, meaning the longer it goes into the future, it tends to decrease in its effectiveness of when it could be useful. And so what this automation does is just bringing that back into the decision-making window and allowing you to have the information on a regular basis, on a cadence that helps you to see what you need to see or alert you to what you need to be alerted to as you're going through your daily business and responsibilities. And so it's that consistent set of information where you can see trends happening and find exceptions where it's really helpful. What gets into the way of that on a usually in kind of in a legacy way is it's just often very hard to go through the volume of data that's usually involved with that. So all the common things we all know and see, time consuming, requires a lot of resources, either your own or your staff or others on your team. And then, in doing that, it's not always just straightforward. We all work with multiple different systems. It's often information from a couple of different systems and tying those together or comparing those two to make sure they're still in sync. Those are all important things that help you go through and evaluate if things are on track in your business. So it just, this is why we focus in on automation, is to help that be, to give you the data and the information you need on a regular basis. just to expand on that a little bit further here is we like to talk to this in the terms of these two different triangles. So, the one on the left is how we typically see this, where, starting from, the bottom, there is this data operations. And, how do you get the data out of the systems? Is it via download? Is there something that's sent to you in email? But, it's first just getting the raw data extracted out, and that's usually, quite a task. We will often see this land in a spreadsheet. So you have these large complex spreadsheets, maybe multiple tabs, and that's the beginning of the process. And then there's dissecting that, summarizing all the things you need to do to take that raw data and turn it into something that's reportable, understandable, summarized, all the things that happen, and bringing that together. And, while it may not be as long as getting the data to begin with, it still chews up a significant amount of resources. And then what it leaves you with is this little bit of time to actually kind of analyze it and make the decision. And the timing when that happens may be, a bit after the fact. So you might have had to make a decision via, your gut feel, and then you get in the information, you can see, was that on track? And the next time you go through that cycle, would you do something different? Now let's just talk about what automation can do for you. Is all those pieces about getting the data, reshaping it, getting it divided out into the different departmental data sets, all the things you need to make it informative can be done on an automated way and on a regular cadence. What that means is, one, it's way more timely, and two, it's right there at your fingertips when you're deciding what you need to do. So there's just a lot of value in the timeliness and the regular cadence of having this, and this is what automation is really all about.
Loren, if I may, real quick on that topic, I think it's key that you were touching on this, because I think a lot of institutions that we work with, the main focus is trying to prioritize their time as well as approach things from a risk-based manner. And this automation solution really does provide that. And I really wanted to kind of expand upon that, because a lot of our clients that have moved forward with potentially having some level of automation within their organization with regards to the information that's being processed and analyzed, this has actually produced those results for them where they are saying, hey, we are actually able to now, if my time as the CFO, or my time as the controller, or as my time as a compliance manager, or as a BSA expert or a compliance officer, BSA officer, right? I can now focus my time a little bit more on some of the areas that I felt were a little bit more pressing. And no longer do we need to potentially have to expand my role or potentially look into adding additional counts of FTE, right? So I think that's really key, though, and I appreciate you touching on that.
Yeah, thank you, Noory. Those are important points. It's about having the information and the solutions where they're readily available, and you don't have to give it an extra time. So in your busy day, it can be distracting trying to find the time to focus and pull that together. So if that's working for you in the background, it's helping to tie your part of the business together, the people around you, tie their different aspects of the business together. And that's what this slide here is really driving at as well. Is that if you're a high-performing organization, you very likely have these characteristics where you have a plan, you're watching performance, and that's all in the scope of responsibility and people, and do they have the plan and the performance and all the information they need to be effective in their jobs. And so that's what the triangle in the middle is illustrating, is that it really takes data to pull this all together. And that data can be, quite large and detailed data sets in their raw form, but it becomes useful in the summarization and the reporting in the presentation, and preparing the data for that in a manual way can be a very heavy lift. And so this is where automation comes in, is to making sure that this link of information that ties this high-performing organization all together is done on a regular automated way, where it just becomes available at the right time in your fingertips. And so while there's a few kind of key bullets down the side here about, high performing organizations choosing key metrics, et cetera, the one that we really like to kind of cue in on is this business process first approach. So what automation is doing is it's embedding information in the business process. And so, rather than finding just interesting information, it is finding actionable information and making it available at the right time within the business process at the point of the day that you need that.
Loren, actually, one of the other areas that I think is key to mention is this process can also identify metrics that can be quantified. And I think where that really helps is the enterprise risk management process, or that's where we've seen some institutions implement this, is where they may not have a sound or a formal ERM program or a process in place. The automation is where it comes into play for some of those clients, has specifically been situations where they are now able to produce and quantify certain KRIs, key risk indicators, and KPIs, and actually have that drive further up so that executive management can now analyze how the business is being efficient or moving forward. And that was really in help due to the automated processes to actually develop some of those figures. Now, those figures can be developed internally, manually as well, but through the utilization of automation for these clients from ours, they've been able to do that and have it readily available, and so that it does fit this triangle and this circle, and it comes full circle so that everyone does have that information readily available and actually to move them forward. And we do see a big jump in that for a lot of our institutions that are moving up from sub $1 billion to above $1 billion, or whether they're sub 10 billion to above 10 billion. Those expectations from the regulators are actually there as well, as you develop and grow larger, to have those KRIs and KPIs and actually having those analyzed, as well as a sound ERM program. And a lot of this automation can help with that too.
Yeah, thank you for that, Noory. So those are the reasons why, and that's where the value is in automation. So what we want to do here is now just talk about a few things that would characterize, automation, what it can, and places that can be used, and then we'll give you an illustration right after. It's like, what is this thing that we're talking about? And so with this analytic process automation, it's, a lot of what you're probably working with is spreadsheets or other data sets that just have a lot of rows, and it needs in its raw form, and it needs this manual preparation. So these tools are just in their DNA to just deal with that and process them down to something that's much more consumable. It's also that, many times you'll get not just one data set, but you have to combine them together. They're very good at combining data together, and then looking for the insights that's kind of baked into the details of the data, and prepare that so it can then be pulled out and then placed in, some type of visualization, whether that it's a report or a dashboard or the like. But all the work that goes into preparing that data prior to going into the visualization is what this tool is all about. This idea of freeing up time for your employees, it's not only does it free up their time, but more importantly, it gives them the space to think about and to kind of understand what is that data saying, and then be able to process that, talk to their teammates about that, and then make decisions around it. And then there's always this time-intensive analysis. So it's not only time-sensitive, but it's time-intensive. So it's just a lot of different areas, whether it's in the risk side, as Noory's pointed out, or it's on the business operations side. There's many different places this can be used. Okay, so what I want to do here is just very quickly just look at, what is this tool that we're talking about? So the common one that we like to use is Alteryx. And very briefly, it gives you this illustrated flow of processing the data. So you can use this as an example if you have a couple of different large spreadsheets, a lot of different rows. And if you were to manually go through and put those together, You might take the tab of one, put it into the tab of the other, and then a VLOOKUP to see where things match up. And you start this whole process of trying to figure out and process what that data is. Well, every step that you talk about there can be an icon on the screen of this tool. And we'll go a little more into this a little later in the presentation. But then you'll see this stepwise process and illustration of how the data flows and where it goes into the output. And so this is what we mean by automation, is something where you can take what you actually do, put it into a repeatable process. Something might take hours to get done, can get done in seconds or minutes. It can be repeatable, and so it just helps to move forward with what you need in terms of getting data into information. And Noory, I think you're going to take us through a few examples here.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate that, Loren. So, we have here a slide here related to, areas to be more cost effective. I think one of the most important things to kind of identify here, based on the previous two slides that Loren had covered as well, was just the fact that the ROI related to, implementing or having an APA is really fast, actually. And what we mean by that is, you essentially can at times get the equivalent of a full-time FTE for the fraction of the cost of an FTE by the implementation of automation or APA or any of these solutions. That was actually one of the first triggers that actually had us discussing this internally as a firm, as well as, a lot of the requests that were coming in from our clients. They were in situations where they were not able to hire certain positions as they were having difficulties finding good candidates. And this actually became a viable solution for them. There are certain sunk costs into the product, but overall it is, at the end of the day, it will come in at a fraction of the cost of an FTE. The benefits that also include, you avoid really human error as a part of this process as well. The advancement and the development of some of these APA products have actually advanced significantly even over the past couple of years. And so it is something to note. Some of the areas that we want to talk about here, you can definitely have it be a part of your reconciliation process, right? Your accounting department performing balance sheet reconciliations or income statement fluctuation analysis can be assisted by this automation process and basically performed completely by the process. Internal audit testing specifically, you can also have, if your institution is looking to implement continuous auditing, specifically continuous auditing is any method used by auditors to perform audit-related activities on a more continuous or continual basis, right? The benefits of that is traditionally fraud and abuse are caught after the event and sometimes long after the possibility of financial recovery. By monitoring transactions continuously, you can reduce the financial loss from these risks as well. But specifically to internal audit testing, you can actually implement continuous auditing over areas such as file maintenance changes, right? I know a lot of us are, if you're a bank or a credit union or a financial institution or any company really that is reviewing file maintenance transactions on a daily, weekly basis, it is quite voluminous, the number of transactions that come through. Automation can provide solutions where you can actually have that done real time at the click of a button and identify any errors, any instances where someone is approving a file maintenance transaction where they shouldn't be. That can definitely be a part of it. What else you can also do is you can look for user access rights and review user access rights within systems for reasonability. Also can be included as employee expenses. You can check for approval authority and to identify unusual outliers in terms of submission of expenses as well by employees to catch anything that might be unusual, right? As well as, comparing, employee expenses to prior periods and for fluctuation analysis. I think that has been key for some of our clients with regards to that. Another area is actually segregation of duties, right? Segregation of duty testing can be cumbersome and heavily dependent on manually extracting and manipulating data while conflicts go unnoticed until monthly or perhaps annual testing. With predefined user lists, automation can provide solutions. So manual testing does not need to be performed over that. So that's really wonderful actually on that end. The last column that we have here is related to reporting. Monthly, quarterly reports that you may submit to the board or audit committee, as well as even call reporting, can be automated internally to provide the output that you may be spending hours, if not days, to do, to prepare, and to be completed within minutes, and saving your time for other tasks, saving your institution really uncapped amounts of dollars, as well as your own personal time. So those were just some of the areas that we've seen some of our clients implement these solutions, areas where they've implemented them, and have seen true real life results that have been very beneficial to their efficiency, as well as I would even go as far as saying their mental health. Some of these areas are just really difficult, and people are just pulling there and they're like, I wish there was a better way to get out of this this difficulty with Excel that I'm always having to deal with. And it produces a lot of manual errors as well. So this solution has helped a lot. But really, yeah, I wanted to cover on that. We can move on from there, Loren.
Great, thank you, Noory. Yeah, so those are just an example or a way of just saying there is a broad spectrum and scope of places that this automation can be used and add a lot of value. And, kind of across the board in each of those, what you'll see is that, the manual time spent preparing that and, all the effort goes into it is just really reduced, and that reduction in value, both, or reduction in time helps both from the aspect of just, the effort, but the timeliness and the repeatability of this. So if you were, say, periodically you were looking at either a risk analysis data set or something else that's really key, if that happens on every couple of weeks, or if you're able to look at that every day, every other day, or it just was something that just ran in the background and you could see it on a regular cadence, so that rather than becoming a major task at some point in your month, it is just a blip on your days you go through. It becomes a regular part, and you'll be able to then pick up on where there are changes and trends. So the frequency of the analysis is another big part of this. It's not that it's easier; it's much more frequent. And then you, of course, have all the time for review. So when you do notice something, you can take a step back and really put your mind to it and say, "Here's what we're seeing." To Nora's earlier point, you also then get away from this aspect of human error. Every time you're dealing with really large data sets, it is so easy to just have one little thing and then it multiplies on top of itself. So in this automation, what you have is it's a tested process. So when it's running the right way. And then you can also see the outputs of this. It's giving you some details about what did it do, and it's documenting that for you. So you can always pull that out and see, a documented way of how these processes have run in the past. So I want to kind of highlight something that we've mentioned kind of along the way here, that it is something that is easy for business users to use. And there's right after this, I'll go into a little more example about the tool itself. But here's the key things about what we mean by a user-driven solution. So these modern tools, what they have very cleverly done is made the process of tying together a stepwise process into a very illustrative type method. And so what it means is that you don't have to have this kind of a requirements development test cycle where it's a fairly complex process in the background, and it requires somebody with IT and or development experience but rather it's something that you can actually just work with and experiment with right on your desktop. So it's called a low-code platform, meaning you kind of stitch things together rather than put out this, complex lines of computer code that are explaining how to do the process, and you can see how it goes. So as we all like to work, it's a drag and drop from a toolbar, and it allows you to preview data at each of the steps. And then as it gets to the point of the output, you can customize those and where they are. So just to put that into an illustration here. So here's that process we were looking at earlier. And maybe you can think of it sort of like putting together your process like a jigsaw puzzle, where each step of the way you're fitting things together, and then each step you're looking at the details, you drag it on, it presents you with a set of options to configure. Would you like it to go this way or that way? And then that process will take place. So there's many different toolbars like the ones you see up there as an illustration that hold different types of things you can do to data, but allows you to really set it up to get the data, to kind of categorize things into groups as you're putting it. So getting the data all kind of cleaned up and prepared, and then doing the main focus. So this is an illustration of a reconciliation. So the main focus would be reconcile, and then the outputs of what reconciles and what doesn't. But what's kind of nice about this is it doesn't have to be a mystery, but rather each step of the way, any point in the process, you click on it, and then over on the right side of the screen, you would get something like that, a table of data that says, here's what it now looks like at this step of the process, so that you have a good visualization to say like, oh, okay, that's how it looks. Now I'm going to do the next step onto it and move into it. So it's a way that a business user can really kind of own what you're doing with the data and quickly build out and keep track of the things that you're working with. Just want to dig a little bit into what this means from a reconciliation, just by way of example, assets or liabilities, basically looking at GL reconciliations, and it handles kind of every step. So it's not just the comparison part of it, but there's always multiple steps to putting this together, where, capturing the data, doing a thorough cleanup and preparation, keeping track of an audit trail of all the steps that it's taking so you can see what it's doing and have insights to how the process is running. So it's not a black box. Go through the reconciliation process itself, and then put the outputs out there in a timely, consistent, organized way.
Loren, I think it might be good to just mention here, that we see this frequently with our clients where, I know everyone is performing reconciliations, if not it's daily, if not weekly or monthly, right? Depending on the GL account. This solution, what it provides is you would be dropping in your trial balance, and just to reiterate the point, it would be capturing all that data that's being input. It would basically do the preparation of that data, reconcile it, and then create output reports for you. And what that would be doing is it would just be having it ready for you so that you can identify any differences that it may identify. And so it also, what it does is it really can help you perform things on a regular systematic cadence, because I can't tell you the number of times that we have institutions where we go in to perform reconciliation testing. And although it's supposed to be scheduled, they're not going to remember. Maybe something came up, an employee had left the institution. There are many reasons why this happens, but because of that, they're like, hey, I don't have the time to do this anymore. And then they get into regulatory scrutiny, or it's even worse, right? Maybe it's a suspense account that should be reconciled all the time. And so I think it's just really key that we understand here that, hey, this is really going to keep you on track.
Yeah, thank you for that, Noory. And to that end, as we talked through different conversations with prospects and clients, and they're considering this, it can still be a little bit of leap of faith, like what exactly is this thing of automation? And so to help with that, what we're doing now is we're offering this kind of low risk proof of concept. So what we do with that is we talk with you about a specific instance that would be of interest or helpful. And then we work with you to gather that data together. We would build that on one of our licenses here at Moss Adams, and then show you what the output looks like, help you understand the whole process, how it came to, how it kind of came through the whole process and how it was put together. And then we turn those results over to you. If that really works for you, then you know the tool will work. You can step into a license, you would own the work we've already done, and you can begin to expand upon it. So it's just a very low risk way of us being able to illustrate for you with your process and provide value with that kind of right out of the gate. So with that, it looks like we've come to the bottom of the hour here. Really want to thank everybody for taking time to join us today. Please feel free to reach out. We would be happy to have a conversation with you.
Thank you, Loren and Noory, for a great presentation today. If we didn't have time to answer your questions, we will do our best to follow up with you after the webcast. Here is a link to an online survey where you can provide feedback for today's presentation. Please take a moment to complete the survey, as your feedback is very important to us. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next time.